get the chat up. That over there. Oh, let's make that small. Hello,
sorry, I'm
hello.
just going to be squirreling away because I'm just writing back to some people. Oh, yeah.
Hello. Right, people are joining us. That's great. Let's move that down here so I can see. Well, welcome, welcome. I can see there's 20 odd people in. That's cool.
Somebody's got a hand up.
All right. Oh, have they? Okay, if you want to communicate with us, could you use the chat? Because I don't know, I think we can see that. That just feels easier for me. So, morning, Ian Taylor. Hello, good morning to you. Sorry we were a few minutes late starting. One of our speakers, for some unknown reason, is really struggling to get in. Hilary has already had tech support from the bedroom, who misses this morning. Hey, and Leah's with us. Well done, Leah.
Wow, that was amazing to get into Zoom this morning. Well, good morning.
Excellent, well done. Okay, how many people are 32? Well, so we'll I'll give it a minute or two. I'll perhaps do the introductions first. Actually, while you're in, everyone's kind of waiting for us just to kick off. There was a couple of things that we thought would be really cool to find out, which is where you are geographically, roughly, just which local authority, or you can give us more specific detail if you want. And because it's kind of interesting for us to know how many, Barrow-in-Furness, okay. Thanks, Ian. And where, so that gives us an idea about whether you're maybe rural or in Hayfreya, thank you for that, or whether you're in the city. And the problem is, I have two questions for you. The other one is, are you already a constituted group or formal group? Are you an informal group? So sorry, you guys who've already responded are going to have to respond again, but that's kind of cool because it will help us informal group. Great, okay. So what we're looking to do is try and so that we can see tailor perhaps some of our responses and how we deliver and make sure that we focus on the things that you want to hear about. So I think someone's keeping a note of this, aren't they? Like we kind of got a like, well done, Rhiannon. Fine, in which case we're going to start. So I'm Lindy Morgan and I'm CEO of Bristol Community Land Trust, and Bristol Community Land Trust hosts Community-Led Homes West, the hub for the west of England. This is great, thanks people, keep that coming in. And obviously we're doing these webinars now. And today we've got Alison Ward, who works for their, well, that's it, well done panelists, give a wave. So that's, what's that, Celebrity Squares, isn't it? And she works for Middlemarch, or is the director of Middlemarch, and tends to work in contract with other organisations. Oh, you've moved over there now, and is going to kick off. And then we've got Hilary, give us a wave, Hilary, done, who is a real professional regarding governance and community shares. And she works through the Cooperative Assistance Network. And then we've got Leah, give us a wave, Leah. Right, Leah, I didn't know whether I was introducing you as, obviously you're a qualified enabler, as whether you were going to sort of draw on your Hillfields project or whether as Ecomotive, but I'll kind of let you decide on that as you do your bit later. So that's the order. We've got a running order to do that in. Alison's going to kick off and she's got some slides to share. So the panelists are going to speak for possibly tops, I don't know, 20 minutes or so, all three of them, sort of a few minutes each. And then we're going to go into questions. I can see I've got, that's okay, I'm going to ignore that. For the questions, it's pretty cool if people can use the Q&A box for that. It's easier, I think, for me to watch them rather than use the chat, because the chat moves up quite quick. I think that's it. If we're not talking, we'll have our mics off, so I'll mute myself. And over to you, Alison, if you want to get that screen up.
All right, thanks very much, Lindy. So I've got a presentation So I'll try and share these slides with you. So just bear with me 1 minute while I get it all up and working. Okay, so this is normally a presentation that I do in a room full of people. So, and I have got a tendency sometimes to lose track a little bit of time. So Lindy, do interrupt me if I start to go on a bit or if I go off any tangents. I just wanted to reflect a bit on my experience of advising community-led housing groups, in particular community land trusts at those early stages. And Rhiannon's asked me to focus on the setup stage and the group stage and what works, what doesn't work, and what our experience has been of that, and any key priorities to focus on. So hopefully that's what we'll do. So just to introduce myself, so I work for Middlemarch, which is an organisation we've just established. We were just a group of people that work together, and we found there's a lot of demand for this work, so we just set up a community interest company to continue doing this work. And we mainly work in partnership with other people. And what we're best known for is working on the Wessex Community Land Trust project, which helps to set up community land trusts in Somerset, Dorset and Devon. This is where we've successfully worked over the past 10 years. We've been working as a partnership for 10 years. The blue dots on the map are projects that are now completed. They're community land trusts, by and large. They're working in partnership with housing associations to deliver their homes, using a model whereby the community land trust has control of the project and the housing association comes in to fund and build the homes. The purple dots are where there are projects that they're in progress. So they're incorporated as a community land trust, but they're somewhere along the journey. You know, they might be setting up their policies, they might be searching for a site, they might be raising funding to deliver what they want to do, negotiating with the landowner, just you know, somewhere in between setting up and completion. So just to show what can be done, we've been working for 10 years. This is our 10th anniversary this spring. We've helped to incorporate 50 community land trusts in that time that have completed 16 housing projects, and many of those are looking for their second projects now. There's 45 schemes that we're supporting somewhere along that journey. And these are some of the homes that have been built as part of that project. And these are some of the logos of the community land trusts that we've worked with. By and large, they're in villages. There are a small number of market towns as well, and smaller settlements. So what I would say about, to start off with, so I'm going to focus on community land trusts because that's what I know best. So there are 4 things about being a community land trust. It's a not-for-profit profit organisation set out to benefit a specific community. Very often, with the groups that I work with, that's a parish council, or it could be a ward of a bigger place, a city or a town. Community land trusts can own land and other assets that are important to a community. They pretty much always start off with affordable housing. They don't have to, according to the legal definition, but that's what they're best known for. That's sort of like the unique selling point of a community land trust. Start off with a housing project, and that housing project becomes the anchor then that other community assets get built on. Because once you've got a group of people that are used to meeting together, that have taken control of an organisation, there's membership throughout the community, and they've got a legal structure in it which enables them to raise funding and negotiate with other bodies. They've got track record of working with other partners like local authorities and housing associations and other people that help them to deliver stuff. Then they're in a good position to do other things as well, not just housing. And we've seen that happen. I'll talk about that in a sec. Community land trusts hold those assets, so they're available and affordable for future generations. We know nobody would bother setting up a community land trust, putting in the effort to deliver an affordable homes for local people project if they thought those homes would be lost to the community at any point. This is super important because most places where I go, people have experience of homes being lost to the community through right to buy. So community land trust is a way to stop that happening. So homes remain in the community. And crucially, the community land trust has to be open to membership by anyone in the community that supports its aims. These are some of the other things that communities want to do. When they set up the community land trust, it's not usually that they say they want to build homes because they love putting bricks on top of other bricks. It's usually because they want the place where they live to be a better, more sustainable place in the long term. And they see housing for local people as one way to do that, because it makes communities more balanced. It enables people to stay in the communities that they feel connected to. But as I said before, once they've got a legal form set up and they've got local people supporting them and local people running these organisations, the organisation is in a really good position to do other things. So a couple of pictures there. One is Queen Camel Old School. Queen Camel set up and built 20 affordable homes for local people in their village in Somerset. And then there was an empty old school building that was important to local people because it had been the school there for I think 100 years. And it was going to be sold for open market housing. Local people said, no, we want to keep this. So now they've taken it on and they're renting out workspace there. They want community cafe, that kind of thing. And the next picture is Norton-Sir-Hamden Community Shop, which is the Norton-Sir-Hamden CLT set up to build 10 affordable homes for local people. And then they took on the village shop, and now they're looking at renewable energy. So housing the first thing, but then moving on to other things we find is the pattern for community land trusts. Why do people bother? Why you're bothering? Well, you know yourself why it's important to you. But what we found in our experience of working with communities is that the reasons why people bother, because it's quite a lot of effort. I've heard it's described as a marathon rather than a sprint, working on a community-led housing project. But we find that local people always find that it's worth putting in the time. They might not always feel it at every point, but overall, it's worth it because they want to lead an important local project. They want broad community support for their project, and they don't trust other people to do it for them. You know, people from the outside of their community don't know what's best as well as the people within that community. So they want to be in charge. Example of that is that's in the West of England area, project we worked on in Marshfield in South Gloucestershire. And just very briefly, the timeline around that was they were a village that was in a little bit of a crisis, because as you'll all know, development can be really controversial, particularly in villages, but no doubt everywhere actually. And there was an unpopular development that had been planned for the village. It divided people within the place. So the village defeated that, but there was still housing need there. So the village thought, well, what do we do about this? The parish council decided to ask local people if they wanted to set up a community land trust to get a solution that met the needs of more people within that community. So they did that. There was a lot of kind of like trying to work out what they should do, where they should build. Once that had been worked out, they spent a long time looking for a site because they're in an area of outstanding natural beauty and there's green belts all around their village. But they knew best about what local people would accept. So they eventually found a site and they've submitted a planning application with 95% support in the planning application from local people for 18 homes, 12 of which are going to be social rent. They'll meet the need in the community. And they found the funding from Homes England and they're partnering with the Housing Association United Communities to deliver the project. Because although they wanted to lead on the project, they didn't actually want to be the builders or the funders of the project. Just got a few pictures of their proposed project. Just going through this really quickly, but I can go back to any, if you're interested. This was the consultation where they were able to show people what they were doing locally. This is the group. Lots of meetings like this involved in my experience of community-led housing projects. And Rhiannon asked me to come up with 3 key priorities, and I couldn't, because I think there's 4 things that you actually need. So my view on what makes a successful community-led housing project is that there are 4 things that are absolutely vital to deliver it. You need people, and that's what we're really talking about today, the group stage. You need local leaders that are interested in getting something going and bringing other people along. And my experience is that in every community, there are some people that are local leaders, and they're usually prepared, if there's a need in the community and the will there to do something, to put their heads over the parapet and get something started. You need good advice. It's been proven that if you've got an advisor that'll stick with you throughout the project, then you're much more likely to deliver. They can uncomplicate the process of community-led housing. They can translate things. They can broker relationships with other people that help you deliver. You need land. That's often the hardest bit, to find the bit of land that you need, but local people know better than other people what the more acceptable sites within their community to develop, and with the good advice you'll be able to find a piece of land. that can deliver what you want on it, and even money. And that again links back to advice. If you've got a good advice that can help you link into the sources of finance and help you to compromise on maybe if you have to deliver something that meets your overall vision, then you know the finance can be found for that. So I'm not really sure how I've done on time, Lindy, but they're the slides that I wanted to show.
That's okay. I just put a message up saying you had 2 minutes and you're finishing up within that, so that's fine.
Okay.
I'm good with that. I've got questions if nobody else does, but obviously we're going to do those after we've heard all the speakers. Thanks, Alison.
Okay.
Right. Okay, Hilary.
Hi. Okay. Well, I'm Bristol based. I've spent many years supporting community-led, democratically run initiatives in any sector, actually, not just housing. For me, the governance element it's not so much about what sector you're in, it's how you make decisions, who's in, who's out, you know, how you account for those decisions. I'm a licensed community shares practitioner, so that means that I can advise on best practice for withdrawable shares in a society model. Not taken up very much within the housing sector at the moment, but very popular in lots of other sectors. So would be good to see some housing models using that at some point soon. And the other kind of overarching thing I wanted to say was housing initiatives, in my experience, they take a long time. They take a lot of energy. And also they're very emotive, you know, from housing co-ops through to community land trusts. It's where people want to live or where they do live. And, you know, so it's really important that the people involved can be open and honest with each other, that you can make transparent decisions and that you can call people in if there's problems, you know, just for an outside view or a bit of facilitation. So the three things that I really wanted to kind of put across for the kind of early stages of groups in housing developments. Be really clear, what are you trying to achieve? You know, who is this for? And, you know, what is the change that you want to affect? Because if you can be clear about that, it's much easier for advisors to come in and kind of say, actually, yeah, you know, it looks like potentially you're a housing co-op, or maybe you're a community land trust, or if you're starting to look from a group that's not incorporated at the moment to try and incorporate, it's always best to try and make those things as clear as possible. And also from, you know, as I said, be really open and honest with each other. Is this about housing yourself, or is this about something, as Alison said, is it about fighting a development in your area that you don't want and putting something better in its place? Is it, you know, is it about for you as an individual and to know from the kind of founding group really what's driving you to put the energy in, because it is a lot of energy and it's a lot of work. If it's because you want to house yourself, be really open, honest about that, and honest with yourself, because if you haven't already identified land or a building, because it's not just about building from new, you know, where are your red lines? Does it have to be within a certain area? And if it's not in that area, you're not going to want to be involved. Because in my experience, a lot of housing groups, you know, it takes a long time. There is a lot of wash in and out of different people. So always keep that really. Where's the money coming from? Are individuals in the group bringing money with them or not? If not, then as Alison says again, then, you know, you've got to find that source of finance. It's not cheap. It's really not cheap. If you want to bring other people on board, which of course you're going to have to, a clear message of what you're going to achieve is really key, because you want people to join you because they're supporting what you're doing. And if that's quite clear, then it's easy for people to kind of go, yes, I want to be part of that and I want to put my effort in. If you're a little bit, you know, more wishy-washy, then it's possible that the group will be taken, you know, from side to side and back to the beginning again a few times before you move on. That's not saying that that's a bad thing, but just be aware, a spiral up and a spiral down, and it all takes time. So the other thing I wanted to just put across now was some of the things not to do, and these are only from my experience, and it's not, you know, there are lots of other things as well. So don't let one or two people take the lead on everything. I've seen far too many times groups really dependent on one or two people. It's really not healthy for them or for you as a group. Don't concentrate on the design of the finished thing at an early stage. It's really nice to think that what colour your walls are going to be, or whether you want solar panels or whatever else. The beginning stages of a group is not really the time for that detail. That will come, and the dreaming is great, but it's kind of early stages is not the best time for that. And then the last thing is, don't think of it as just getting to the point where people are living in the houses. This is a long-term commitment to providing housing, either for rent or for living in. You're usually custodians of that, and the custodians of that means actually being a responsible kind of landlord, or having a contract in place for someone to be a responsible landlord for a very long time. We're talking about buildings that will last 50 plus years, so you need to be thinking about the costs and the maintenance and the management of those buildings for 50 plus years at the beginning, not just when people have moved in and you realise there's a new stage about to happen. So that was really all I wanted to put at this point.
That's great. Thanks, Hilary. That's really cool. And that's sparked another couple of questions off in me as well. So, right, Leah, you've got to see what you can add to that. Leah's got loads of it. This is Leah Eatwell. She's got loads of experience in working with community groups. I'm not sure if she's here kind of going to talk about Hillfields, a group that she's working with at the moment, or just generally using that experience here, Leah. But over to you, and we can ask you questions afterwards. Thanks.
Thanks, Lindy. Well, I definitely love questions. I prefer being led by questions. But yeah, so I've got various hats and work in different capacities within the sector. I'm basically a community-led housing geek. I love the sector at large, from small groups up to what's possible in England at large, or the United Kingdom. And so I think it's been covered really well by Alison and Hilary. But I'll just kind of add what I saw is of working with groups directly. I think it's really important, as you both said, to kind of work with the vision and mission first of all. So to sit down with a group and really try and work out what it is they want to do, or what you want to do, and why you want to do it. And that's relevant, especially before you're incorporated or decided what kind of vehicle you want to create to carry you through this project and journey, which everyone has said is not, a quick fix in any way. You really want to set up a vehicle and go on the journey with people that you really enjoy spending time with. And the process of building is when your community starts to come to life through the project, which is really important to nourish that. This definitely, what doesn't work, what I've seen not work well a number of times, is when you are in it for the outcome. Because if you're just in it for the outcome, you won't make it all the way. You need to be in it for the process as much as the outcome. And when groups come at it from that point, by the time the houses are built, you end up with such a strong community that's already thriving before you move into the houses, which then is where you see the far more larger benefits of community-led housing. And we see these kind of ripple effects of benefits with community developments over the country, where it's not just the residents or the people who worked on the project, but also these community-led developments then have massive positive effects on the whole local area and community, village, town. So it's a really exciting in those senses, especially at a time where there is a very limited choice in the housing market at the moment. If you want to go and buy a house, it's quite likely that you wouldn't be able to find anything that maybe sets your heart on fire. So it's really important, the community-led housing sector is creating a viable alternative to your kind of semi-detached 3 parking spaces wimpy home or whatever. Shouldn't have used the name. The developers are doing a great job providing housing, but we think we can maybe just set the heart on fire a little bit more and create a really exciting homes. And so then working with groups at the beginning, I think, to look at that vision and mission. And the mission really is kind of, once you know what you want to build, then how are you going to build it? And I really love getting right in there with the kind of governance structures quite early on, like who are you and how are you going to make decisions together, and what are you going to do if you don't all come at a decision with the same idea straight away. I love to get those kind of things out on the table with groups kind of early on, and just so that everyone can have an agreement of what we're trying to do, that then you can refer back to in the short, medium and long term. Because as was said by both Alison and Hilary, this is a really long term, you know, in Hillfields, we're building new houses off in this estate, which is 100 years old. It's just celebrated its 100th year birthday. So it's amazing to look at what houses we can build now that will complement the houses that have been standing for 100 years. So really kind of add value to the surrounding houses whilst also generating new houses and looking at the next 100 years. And I'm really all for supporting good quality houses to be built that will last at least 100 years, and look future-proofing them. And I just think now is a time where it's needed more than ever. This crazy and strange situation that we find ourselves in the world, to me, highlights so clearly the need for community and the want. I think everyone wants to live in community, and we have an amazing opportunity now going back in as we start to ease the lockdown over the coming weeks, months, however long it takes, to really be looking at the housing sector, looking at groups on the ground, looking at projects and seeing how we can respond to the learning of the last months. And yeah, so I think it's a really exciting time, and I am also really excited by Bristol City Council's new land disposal policy, and really excited to see so many attendees on the call and just to see what's possible in Bristol. And happy to be on the call. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Leah. Okay, this is great. We've got some questions coming up now, and I'll kind of field them to who I think might be the best first respondee, but please, if anyone now has something else to add. I want to also introduce Susan Cataldi, who's the manager for the Community-Led Homes West Hub. So, and I'm actually going to put that first question to you, Sue. So Ian's asking, so the question is there funding available to support the development of CLTs? Alison, if you want to come in afterwards as well on anything or anybody, then do. Suze. Oh, you're muted. You're muted. Unmute. Unmute, Suze.
Hello. Hi, Ian. Yes, there is. Well, there's a few funding elements that are on pause at the moment, but there is funding for CLTs. If you, we've got lots of things on our website about funding that you can access that we are keeping relevant and up to date. I think Alison can tell us exactly the kind of funding in terms of the CLTs, if that's specific, what's available, what's paused. I think we are, in light of COVID-19, pausing quite a little bit, but certainly developing CLTs. Alison, if you could.
Yeah, sure. So yes, Susan, totally right. At the minute, there's very little in the way of grant funding, because we came to the end of a really big grant funding programme, the Community-Led Housing Fund, which has just concluded, but we are expecting more funding to be announced by the government for this, but we're waiting on it. But nonetheless, we're still working with groups to go forward. The majority of groups that I work with need very little funding for the startup phases. Usually it's groups of people that are meeting in their kitchen, getting going. You can set up a community benefit society, which is the most common legal form for community land trusts, for, you know, I think probably on average about 500 quid. So if you can raise that from your local partners, parish council, you know, that kind of thing, that'll get you going. And then in terms of delivery, where there's no grant funding available, and we've worked with quite a number of CLTs in the past to deliver homes where there hasn't been any grant funding to cover things like architects' fees and that kind of thing, we find that there are often suitable partners that are prepared to let the community land trust take the lead on all the key decisions, like where sites are going to be, what homes are going to look like, what the allocation criteria is going to be for the homes. So if the homes are for local people, what does that mean? What is a local person? The CLT will decide that. And a development partner like a housing association will come in and pay for the pre-development fees and also for the building of the homes. It's far better to have an environment where there's more grant, and we are hoping that we're moving, this year to more grant coming online. But we know that homes are deliverable for CLTs where they can find development partners that'll work with them and let them take the lead where there isn't grant funding as well.
Thanks, Alison. I mean, just also to say that depending where you are geographically, most hubs, as we do, we've got a small amount of money, particularly for those this early stage that we're talking about. So, if it's about trying to get some kind of to scope the interest in your community for a community-led housing scheme, and you need some support in marketing that, organising that, and perhaps a professional, someone who can give some advice to that group. That's kind of not too expensive, and stuff that the hub for Homes West can help you with. Once a decision is made, we want to go for this, then you start getting into bigger money, obviously. Hilary, did you want to come in, Hilary?
Yeah, just to say, if anyone's looking at housing co-op structures, then it's possible that Co-ops UK have a fund called the Hive. It's possible still at the moment to apply for that if you're looking at co-op structures.
We should get a link to that on our website for people. And also, Alison's right. I mean, there have been specific funds, but actually there are lots of different local community funds from local authorities and parish councils, which are there to help, particularly in the early setup days when we're not talking lots of money. So I'm going to move on to the next question. And I think actually an answer from all three of you would be kind of cool, because it's slightly different depending on where you're coming at, which is Ian's again. So what is a typical time frame from start of process to occupied units? So Leah, do you want to go first? What's your kind of experience?
Well, how long is a piece of string? I mean, I don't think you can do it in less than 3 years. 2.5 years would be the absolute quickest. But then I've known of projects that have taken, over a decade. I think probably if I would say I'd be for Hillfields, I'm aiming at 3 to 4 years from absolute pre-conception to people moving in.
And what is it about Hillfields that means, what particular attributes has Hillfields got, Leah, that means that you think you can achieve it in 3 to 4 years?
So Hillfields, we're building 10 units, and the thing that makes it easier is that it's for a charity, for an anchor organisation, a geographically local charity anchor organisation, right. Which makes the decision making is much more, it's very structured. The governance structures are in place, and people are quite happy sitting within an existing structure. So it's basically the cogs are well oiled, so the decisions kind of run through smoothly. Some of the biggest delays I've seen, and where projects are taking kind of more towards a decade, is when there can be bounce back on really quite simple, and I wouldn't want to say kind of irrelevant decisions, but there can be decisions churn round for 6 months, and it was talking about a garden boundary, which then actually due to planning didn't exist, for example.
Exactly. So you've got established governance, established decision-making process that people are comfortable with, that is accountable, I suppose, and gets the job done. Alison, do you want to come in on this question?
Yeah, sure. No, I completely agree with Leah. You have to just put your finger in the air. And it's really hard to tell, because there are so many, all groups are different, and there are so many, things that can come up along the way. The shortest projects that, in terms of the length of time to deliver, that we've worked on has been 2.5 years, and the longest we've been working with for 10 years. And I don't think there's always a way to tell how long, in my experience, how long something's going to take. The one that we've been working on for 10 years was a group that already owned their land. So it's it's really difficult to tell. And yet others that seemingly, no site, group of disparate people that just have gathered together can suddenly, get roaring with a fair wind. So, but what we do say for our own planning is that there's an average of 6 years from start to finish.
Okay, thank you. Did anyone else? Hilary, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, just from the point of view of housing co-ops, just to come from a different angle, housing co-ops where groups of people are looking at existing buildings to move in and live. I would say from groups when I've started to talk to them, which is at the point when they either wanting to incorporate or, look at loan finance. 18 months probably is the quickest. It depends. In some areas I have known it quicker, but it depends on the price of housing stock where you are. So how much money people have to raise. And it's a bit quicker than when you're talking about building for housing co-ops looking at existing buildings.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you. Oh God, this is a tough question. How would you define a community? Is it attached to location or community need? There's probably people have probably got PhDs on this, but here a minute each. Go on, Hilary. Yeah. Your challenge, well accepted.
Yeah, challenge accepted. We, in the line of work I do, we talk about two types of communities. So we talk about communities of interest, which is not geographically based, but it might be people with disabilities or gender specific groups. And then we talk about communities being geographic, so where you are looking at an area, so you have a physical boundary and it's people within that boundary.
Thank you. Oh, that was succinct. I don't know. Yes, Leah.
Yeah, and then I would just add, which you did say, Hilary, but specifically it can be communities based on need. So like a housing need or a specific type of housing need is another type of community.
Great. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to the next question. This is Ian again. He's asking, can we talk about the role of councils where they are the public housing providers? So that, I guess that's where you've still got council-owned stock property where it's not been transferred to a housing association. I'm hoping I've interpreted your question correctly, Ian. Does anybody want to come in on this? I mean, obviously, Bristol is a local authority that's still, I'll just get the thing going, that still owns its own housing and provides council housing, and actually has set up a development arm through Gorham and is building again. So I guess every local authority is different. Bristol has really grasped the role of or the purpose of community-led housing pretty firmly and been very supportive. That said, you can see that there will be clashes between what community-led housing wants to achieve and Gorham Homes, which is Bristol City Council developer. You can see that there could be, when you're looking at land within Bristol, both Gorham will want it, as will community-led housing groups. And I think that's going to be interesting to see how that pans out. But I think, picking on a point that Alison raised earlier, the fact is local authorities can come in and build, but those homes are still subject to the right to buy. Whereas if you can do it through a land trust, then you can keep, they're not subject to the right to buy. So there could be a point there that particularly is in favour of community-led housing. Alison?
Yeah, I just wanted, I don't know if it's going to directly answer the question, but I just wanted to say how crucial the support of the local authority really is. So where we've worked, it's possible to deliver community-led housing in areas where there's a non-supportive local authority, or a very passive local authority. But where you engage with your local authority, it's so much easier to deliver things. It's so much easier to get things done.
I had a question which I'll pull in now, because after you did your bit, Alison, which was about, what generally do you see the role is for parish councils? In your experience, how much are they involved or not?
So what our experience is working with local leaders by and large. So and often local leaders are attracted to the parish council. So we find with many of the community groups that we work with, it's been started off by a parish council. Our parish councils have to get involved with loads of stuff, and they have to spend hours and hours talking about dog mess and that kind of thing. Whereas a community land trust or community-led housing project is a very specific, focused project. So usually where we've got involved, the parish council has said, we don't have the time to focus on this. We want somebody else to do it, but we're happy to, you know, spark something off and hold a public meeting and say who wants to get involved. And then I'll attend a public meeting that's been hosted by the parish council and just say, well, this is what a community land trust is. Does anybody want to volunteer to get involved and form a steering group to, you know, start to look at this more closely and set up an organisation and look for a site and that kind of thing. And I would say very, very typically, one or two of those parish councillors still want to get involved because they're already taking on that kind of local leadership role. They're interested in those kind of things, which is why they joined the parish council in the first place. But equally, there's quite a few parish councils that are just like, glad you're doing this, or even occasionally not glad you're doing this, but you know, get on with it. And then what's really interesting is that we usually find that people come forward that haven't volunteered in the community before, but they're attracted to the idea of volunteering on a project that's very focused on a job, like build affordable homes for local people, or they've got some skills that they think, well, this would be useful. You know, I can use some of my skills. I've worked, you know, I've run a building firm in the past, or, you know, I've got some knowledge about the planning process, and they want to use those skills for the community. And often those people would take an important role as well. So the parish council has an important role in kind of promoting it, but then the community land trust is always a separate organisation.
Okay,
and that's not to say, though, sorry to interrupt, but just to say also parish councils can deliver homes, but that's something separate to what we're talking about, I think, today.
Yeah, sure, of course. Yeah, I was just kind of wondering, right, okay, I need to sort of move us on because we've got 7 questions here and we've got 15 minutes and there's probably might be some more. Yeah, so this is, Amelia has noticed that, yes, the plots are out there. The Bristol City Council has released some sites for community groups to bid on. The details of the process for bidding for the land, that should be kind of freely available. Suze, do you want to come in on this?
Yeah, so it's on the website. I put a link. If you go to the Get Funding link, you'll find that there is a title under plots. It's all going through pro-contract through the council. And I think somebody mentioned, is it a competitive scenario? It is. It will be, you'll have 4 months from the application date, which was on the 1st of April, to submit. So you will go through a process document where you can ask for information. Once you've registered on pro-contract, you need to then go to the right link to apply, and then you'll apply for information, and that information will be readily available in terms of site details, and then you'll need to go through the application process. Pro-contract has got lots of details there, lots of downloads. We've also got some additional documents that if anybody needs any, it's really just about the process of pro-contract, not necessarily in terms of the exact site. But obviously the council are very aware that we are in lockdown measures. So part of that is speaking to groups and making sure that groups aren't going to those specific sites. We understand that's really difficult, as I'm sure groups will want to go onto site, but unfortunately that was one of the conditions of releasing the sites. So yeah, it's an important part.
And
Yes, Leah.
Just to Susan, it's from the 1st of May.
Yeah, sorry, 1st of May, sorry, I said April, May, sorry. Yeah, so 1st of May.
And of course, you know, that may well be extended, but yeah, it's good to get it, that it's up and we've got it going, and they'll keep it under review. I'm going to move on to the next question, which is also Amelia, which she's asking about, and we did say about this, you're using the word to not have groups in competition with each other. We need to be careful about that because of anti-competition legislation. It wasn't so much about, it was about not undermining each other. If there is an established group in an area, we have to think about, given that this is about community-led housing, would it be appropriate for a community group who have no maybe connection to that area to come in and try and outbid or compete on a site. There's no right or wrong, but I think there's a discussion that needs to be had. The hub can't control that because everything has to go through pro contract, but I would say, I think it's a bit suck it and see, and we would hope that people would have the courtesy to kind of contact the hub and say, we're interested in looking at this site. Are you aware of any other groups? And it's quite likely that we would be. And then we would say, well, maybe you need to join up with that group, or the group that's already looking at that is very well advanced, because it's just about advising people as to whether it's a runner or not for them. So there's not a process carved in stone, because that would be inappropriate. But I think if anyone is looking at a site in Bristol, you should pick the phone up or drop us an email so that we can either connect you with people, the right people to take your bid forward, or whatever the right advice might be. Okay, everybody cool with that response? Because I do want to move on a bit. That's done. Right. Oh, okay. We're doing it. So Hazel's asking, we're interested in purchasing an existing building. Is it possible to have multiple mortgages for one property? Right, we're doing a finance webinar in a couple of weeks' time. I got some view on this. If anybody else has got a comment that they want to come in with. Hilary, yes, please.
So it is quite usual actually within housing co-ops, when they're buying a building, they might have loan stock from friends and family, which are loans. They might have a primary loan, which would potentially be secured by the loan, if it was a mainstream lender. But there are also other what we call soft lenders, lenders of last resort, who might come in with smaller amounts of money, less secured, more at risk for them, so the cost of the finance would be more. But yes, it's quite usual to have multiple sources of loan finance.
Does anybody want to add to that? No. Okay, I will pick this up too as part of it's a good question, and we do want to we were working with Triodos to try and do something. Really, this is also about helping people with the sites in what is it that their assessment panels, the evaluation panels, when you're putting your bid in your application for borrowing, what are they looking for? And the point that Hilary's making about, you know, who's got first, like security, who's got first charge, you know, second charge, whether second charge is good enough, etc. What they're looking for in a business plan around, you know, financial sustainability as well as affordability. For immediately for the development as well as long term, coming back to points that people made earlier, I think and Hilary was saying about, you know, the long term management. So we'll make a note of that and pick that question up to get you some more detail on it at our next webinar even. Next question, so that one's done. Do we have much information about mutual home ownership schemes, and what are the views of your views of these in terms of funding and whether they can work? Who wants to come in first? Panel, Leah, yeah.
So I would just say that Your Space up in York is a really good example of this. And they're currently in the process of proving that it's possible, but they haven't quite done it yet. But I would look at their model. It's quite an intricate but interesting model that would be worth looking at if you're interested in MHOs.
Okay, thank you. Hilary, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I think Lilac Leeds is also mutual home ownership. So they've been up and running for a long time. They've won some awards. They're very open with what they've done and how they do it. So
yeah, it's a good shout. Yeah,
it's definitely a viable option.
Yeah, and it's all of that governance, isn't it, behind that for the to give people the security, which Lilac would share that, I'm sure. Thank you.
Lilac have a lot of free resources on their website, free kind of briefings and loads of information to download from them.
Thank you. How can local authorities best encourage community-led housing? Well, I think it'd be interesting to hear from each panellist, you know, a positive experience of local authorities, and perhaps one that hasn't worked so well. Alison, do you want to go first?
Yeah, so we've worked with some really great local authorities who have made time available to attend public meetings where communities have talked to their community about, well, shall we do a housing scheme, and answered, very honestly and genuinely about the housing need and the situation in the planning environment. And it's that kind of information that communities need. We've worked in areas where the local authority have attended all of the representatives attended all of the steering group meetings in a supportive capacity that has made funding available, where they've received funding through either Section 106 contributions that they've been able to free up to support other housing groups, or through the community-led housing fund, which some local authorities still have funding left. And that have worked with facilitators and enablers like Community-Led Homes West to help bring projects forward and talk about sites as well, and release sites. So we know with Bristol City Council talking about actually releasing sites that can be available for community groups to bid, and that really gets things going. I can't emphasise enough how important that local authority support is. But as I said before, even where local authorities aren't supportive, it's possible to deliver something. Sometimes local authorities have been known to just want to deliver their own way, and that hasn't involved the community so much. But nonetheless, communities can still get on, access enabling support from hubs like Community-Led Homes West, and deliver something regardless. But it is more difficult without that.
Yeah, thanks, Alison. And just to add to that point about Bristol, there also, that you can evidence social value instead of money, hard cash. So if you've got those social value outputs, they're assessing it on that. Would who'd like to come in, Leah?
Well, I just think that, like you've said, releasing sites is just a fantastic way for a local authority to support community-led housing. I don't think there is a much better way. And my personal experience is only with Bristol City Council, but they've been really supportive. I've had actually great experiences with Bristol City Council. I can be quite persistent, so I'd encourage anyone, if they want to have a good experience, if they want to give the local authority the opportunity to support them, then I like to just kind of be quite persistent at putting myself at the top of their queue. And that's been a good strategy.
Yeah, I would support that, because the project that I was working on was the same. The persistence and the strength required, and also what you realise is, whilst politically there's really good support from Bristol City Council, that hasn't necessarily always translated into fully enabling and empowering the officers who are actually dealing with it. And property people are property people, and planners are planners, and they're still on the learning curve in understanding working with community groups and community-led housing. So, I don't want to knock them, because they're trying really hard, but do understand this is so new and they are on that learning curve. Hilary, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, and again, I'll come from a kind of co-op perspective, because I think the other angles have been covered quite well, really. But where you're looking at kind of single households, it doesn't really need the local authority support. But I know Preston certainly has done some great work transferring out some of its housing stock into the Confederation of Co-op Housing, CCH, community gateway model. So that's into community ownership in effect. And I just really hope that the City Council looks at buildings as well as sites.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, we've got a couple of questions coming in late here. We've got a few minutes. How do you generally define local? This is Adam. We mostly live and work within an area of outstanding natural beauty, and land is expensive and difficult to acquire. We could look for sites further afield, which would be more suitable for development, but would not have the local connections. I think that's could be a struggle, but I think that's about having conversations with your local authority and parish councils. that's where I would say that the conversation has to start, and where the existing communities are. It's about whether you can get, whether you could look at it on a bigger regional basis. I don't know whether you want to come in on that, Alison. You know, it's.
So I just say, because we haven't got lots of time, that some really good advice would help you. So yeah, to contact the hub, and that will help you to establish the parameters for your site search. But it's been known for sites in expensive areas to be found.
Yeah, they can be found, and I think that's you need more of a detailed conversation. Give us a shout, and that's done. And okay, if it's quick, we can do it. Got about a minute. Is the West Hub thinking of hosting a webinar where all the Bristol CLH can meet each other and discuss their ideas to help form a community and culture of support? Well, yeah, yes, we could, but it's important to remember that the Hub is not here just for Bristol. We're here for the whole of the west of England. So we need to think about how that did, and to make sure that then we don't become something that is exclusive for Bristol. We are here to support community groups in South Gloss, North Somerset, and Bath and North East Somerset. Good question, good point. We'll have a think about that. Suze.
Yeah, I think we had sort of, before COVID-19, we wanted to do lots of groups and getting people together. Unfortunately, we won't be able to do that, but we could look to sort of hosting something online with support, if that works, something sort of through the months. Maddie, we could definitely look at that, couldn't we?
Well, and certainly perhaps coalescing around the sites that Bristol have released. Okay, well done, everyone. Excellent. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to everyone who zoomed in. Zoomed, it's just great, isn't it? I'll just zoom here and zoom there. So I hope you found it useful. I'm sorry we couldn't answer any more questions, but please contact us at the Hub, email or call us, and we can, if we don't know it, we'll know someone who does, and we will contact them on your behalf. And I think one of the things to do is, I think what I've learned from this is you need lots of enthusiasm to keep going, to keep that energy going for the long period of time. You need to be really clear about what your vision, your mission, and your objectives are, so that you can identify what is the right format as such for your group. And I love that. You've got to be in it for the process and not just the outcome, because otherwise the process will do, I think, is the underlying message of that. So hope that kind of sums it up, and thank you very much, everyone, and see you next time. We've got something else in a couple of weeks' time, but we'll message you about that. Thank you.
Thanks, Lindy. Thanks, everyone.
Okay,
Thank
bye
you.
now.
Bye.
Bye.